Hello and welcome. You're watching FYI. I'm Sonal Mehrotra Kapoor. Now, NCB versus Bollywood is a story that is unfolding in different ways, and that has been the story throughout this year and last year as well. But we're not going to get into what happened to Aryan Khan. Did he have drugs on him? Did he not have drugs on him? We thought on FYI we'll decode for you what exactly is India's drug policy. What does India's law say on possession, selling, purchase, distribution, etc. of drugs? On different drugs, what really applies? Just to understand, are we up to date? Is the Indian law up to speed with how the story of drugs and contraband is evolving? So that's going to be our focus on the program today. Let's first, as always, get into our explainer. Let's start with the basics. What does Indian law really say on drugs? Now, acts punishable under Section 20 of the Narcotics, Drug and the Chronotic Substances Act 1985, they go on to say that sale, purchase, possession, transportation, interstate import-export or any other commercial activity of cannabis is punishable. What is this punishment? Let's take a look at that. Punishment for possession specifically, since that seems to be the big concern as of this moment. Punishment for holding small quantity of drugs. And what exactly is small quantity, big quantity, I'll also tell you in the next graphic. But first, for small quantity, prescribed punishment is imprisonment up to 6 months only, fine up to 10,000, or they could fine you and send you in for 6 months behind bars. Both can be done. Punishment for holding more than small quantity but less than the commercial quantity of drugs. Now, this prescribed punishment is imprisonment up to 10 years, fine of 1 lakh, or both can be done as well. Punishment for holding commercial quantity, that is up to 10 to 20 years behind bars, 1 to 2 lakh, or both can be seen. But as you take note of that, remember we talk about quantity is very important. That tells you whether you are the end user, you are the supplier, you are part of the cartel, what it is, and thus the law is different for all the three categories. The small and commercial quantity, really what exactly is that? 1 kg cannabis is considered to be small quantity, 20 kg or more is said to be commercial quantity. Now, I'm saying cannabis in particular right now because every other drug has a different kind of punishment on it, or the categorization of small and more is different. Charas or hash, as they say, 100 grams is supposed to be small quantity, 1 kg or more is said to be commercial quantity. 2 grams of cocaine is said to be small quantity, 100 grams or more is said to be commercial quantity. 25 grams of opium is said to be small, 2.5 kg said to be commercial. 5 grams of heroin is said to be small, 250 grams more or commercial quantity. 1 kg of ganja small quantity, 20 or more commercial is quantity. 0.5 grams of MDMA small quantity, 10 grams or more is commercial quantity. So once these categories come into place, punishment under the Indian law is different. But can someone who has been caught with small quantity of drug get immunity from prosecution? The answer is mostly yes, if you fall under the small quantity. Now, any addict who is charged with offences involving small quantity of under the NDPS, who is voluntarily seeking to undergo medical treatment or de-addiction also from a hospital or an institute maintained or recognized by the government, will be let go. And also, if they agree to undergo any such treatment, they shall not be liable. Here again, they shall not be liable to prosecution under any other section for offences involving small quantity of narcotics, drugs, or any other substance for that matter, right? Let's move on to the next graphic as we talk about that. And this is what exactly happened then. Now, while a lot of attention is going to celebrities being found with consumption quantity of very, very small quantity of drugs, the big haul, right? India's biggest drug haul, was that ignored? We on NDTV at least spoke constantly about 3,000 kgs of heroin being seized at the Adani Mundra port in Gujarat. This was said to be of estimated worth of over 20,000 crore. This was reportedly the single largest seizure that had happened till date, and drugs were part of a shipment that was supposedly talcum powder from Afghanistan that arrived to India. Now that is a really big quantity. That kind of seizure can lead you to cartels. That kind of seizure can open up, when investigation done properly, will open up big names really, and that is how you can even stop the usage of actually supply chain as well. But while we still wait to hear what happened on that story, a lot of other celebrity drug abuse is obviously coming under attention. We also then in our research looked at what kind of drug cases were actually registered in India in 2020. Pandemic year, remember. Even in this year, under the NDPS Act, 59,806 cases were registered. 44% for possession of drugs for trafficking, and 56% for personal consumption. Again, what do you see here? 56% of the raids that were carrying out, etc., were just for personal use, small quantities, and 44, much lesser percentage, for possession of drugs for trafficking, that is large quantity. Again, a mismatch over there. And why are we calling it a mismatch? Because research tells you that countries which decriminalized public and private use of drugs of any sort really ended up getting a larger part of their population de-addicted. Should be the opposite, right? But look at the example of Portugal. A lot of experts talk about what happened in Portugal. Portugal decriminalized acquisition or any possession of all drugs, and this was in 2000. It became the first country in the world to decriminalize the consumption of all drugs, adopting an approach focused on public health rather than public order priorities. This meant that the percentage of people in prison in Portugal for drug law violations had decreased dramatically from 44% in 1999 to 24% in 2013. Under the law, now drug dealers still go to prison. That is, your cartels, your dealers, your big scams that are running around, they still go to prison, but anyone caught with less than 10-day supply, like we have small quantity, big quantity in India, they categorize it as less than 10-day supply of any drug, including marijuana as well, heroin as well, is typically sent to a local commission consisting of a doctor, a lawyer, and a social worker, like our de-addiction centers. There is no distinction made between hard and soft drugs or whether consumption happens in private or public places. And that is what really put Portugal as a case study on the world map, where they said that because of these new laws, we were able to fight the menace much better. India, on the other hand, the NDPS Act says it is illegal for any person to produce, manufacture, cultivate, possess, sell, purchase, transport, like we said in the first graphic as well, and consume any narcotic drug that is, or any contraband, and prohibition makes illegal drugs stronger and more potent. Now, this was a study that was done as well. So lots to think about from the pointers, from what we are gathering from statistics emerging from India, and how perhaps other countries have fought this drug menace. Having understood that, let's break it open to our guest now. Joining us on the program is Mr. D. Banerjee, the former officer, Central Bureau of Narcotics, and thus a great person to get some insight on how exactly this works. Also joining us is Varun Singh. He's an advocate in the Supreme Court. We also have Mr. Satyadas, advocate in the Supreme Court, and Sanjay Hegde as well joins us. Let me start with Mr. Banerjee. Mr. Banerjee, we were speaking before on the program as well, and I wanted to understand from you, of late, a lot of, if you even look at how raids were carried out by the NCB in the past 1 year, in 2020, in the pandemic year, remember, the raids that were carried out on small quantity possession of drugs were much higher than, say, when it was carried out in commercial quantity. Is that a problem according to you? Mr. Banerjee, I believe you're on mute. If you could unmute yourself, please.
I believe that the law, section 27, is a bit harsh. In fact, you see, there are most of these cities, Bombay, Delhi, Calcutta, and all that, many college students, and those who are young, say below 22, 23, they take to drugs, hard drugs, just for party, not for this thing. But just for taking drugs, if they are arrested, you should understand, if they are arrested, their entire career will be stopped. They will not have any career, jobs, or anything. They will be shunned by society as if they are criminals and all that. And once they go to jail, they will become worse. So this law, Section 27, it needs to be amended. People who are caught consuming drugs, they should be sent for compulsory de-addiction. But in case they commit an offense, second offense, then they can be jailed. But for first offense, they should already be sent for de-addiction. Now, I would like to tell you one thing. India is the largest producer of opium and all that. Previously, we had the Opium Act and the Dangerous Drugs Act. Most of these laws, the NDTV Act and all that, we are a member of the United Nations. Now, according to the United Nations laws, we have also amended the United Nations requirement. We have also amended the Opium and the DD Act and combined it to the NDTV Act. In 1985, when this act was promulgated, there was no distinction between small quantity, large quantity, and commercial quantity and all that. It was amended because there were people who were going to jail for 10 years for possessing very minute quantity. Then it was amended. But even after this amendment, I feel that it is very harsh. So it should be amended. Now, making arrests of big quantity is very difficult. You have got to get good informers and plan it thoroughly. But arresting for small quantity is very, very easy. You go to any hotel, go to any pub, you will find that rave parties are being conducted, and you can arrest a number of people. So your graph goes higher and higher. The number of seizures goes higher and higher. Police officers, narcotics officers, they are always under pressure to perform. And that is why they are always under pressure to perform, to make opium seizures, narcotic seizures and all that. But there have been very few cases where addicts have been arrested, and from interrogating them has led to bigger cartels. This has not yet happened. So only if you have got very good informers, you have got a very good infrastructure, then only you can make good seizures. For example, the one which was done in Munda port. But that seizure is the biggest seizure.
Just hold that thought, Mr. Banerjee, for a moment. A lot of important things that you've mentioned right now, by the way. A lot of stuff that we often talk about, but to hear from you, somebody who's been in the system, is very, very important. Then, would you say that, you said very categorically that a lot of times the NCB and officers are under pressure, and this is an easy catch, right? While catching a big fish is,
first of all,
it takes a lot of effort to do that. I just want to understand from you, so today, when NCB in court goes out to say that, well, we want to understand more, we want to understand a network with these end users, is that possible? Do you think this is an approach with which you can actually get to the cartels?
No, first of all, I'll make it clear. I was in deputation to the NCB. I was in Central Bureau of Narcotics, which is a very old department. And NCB, most of the people are on deputation. I was on deputation there in the early 90s.
I see.
Anyway, it is very difficult. It's very, very next to impossible, really, to catch hold of an addict and from there go to a cartel of international or interstate ramifications.
Wow.
Till date, I believe there have been hardly one or two cases like this, from catching a hold of a peddler or an addict and then catching hold of a big cartel. This has not yet happened.
All right, strong words there. Mr. Sanjay Hegde, you want to weigh in?
Well, we are listening to the voice of experience on the administrative side. And we are basically there with the 1985 law, with a few amendments. A lot of the substances mentioned therein have been decriminalized. You gave the Portugal example, but in a lot of places you have things like marijuana, which is entirely decriminalized. So somebody put that classic definition of tyranny as the ability to make a harsh law and to use it selectively against people. So what happens is that, you raid a particularly a party with particularly rich people around. That's easy targets. You prosecute a few of them. A lot of those cases don't turn up at prosecution. Here also, this particular case, in the backdrop of which we are discussing, obviously, it was certain that there was an informer who said that some of these kids may have undesirable company, and then the man goes on board, waits, and to the best of my knowledge, according to the information so far, it seems to be rather a small quantity. The question is, what was recovered from whom, where, how much, and what can be proved? Only after that do we get to the other larger questions.
I see.
But there's one more factor I'd like to put in here. It is that part of this process of punishment is the leaking to the media, the public naming and shaming, which also affects a lot of lives.
I understand what you're saying. Mr. Shadan Farsad also with us. Then are we effectively saying, what I hear from Mr. Banerjee, what I hear from Sanjay Hegde as well, that is India's drug policy then outdated in some way? Have we not caught up?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's outdated because it does recognize a distinction, like you pointed out, between small quantity in the middle, which is not named as such, and then what is called the commercial quantity. And they are graded punishments. I think the point you are trying to make is that maybe for small quantity, it should be altogether decriminalized. That is personal usage. If drug is found for personal usage, then we should move in the direction of complete decriminalization and rehab if
What
needed.
happened in Portugal, for example, yeah.
Yes, so I think that is something that is worth considering for sure, that for small quantity, when it's for personal possession, it should be not a crime at all. Presently, as pointed out, it is still a crime under Section 27 and it can fall under some other sections as well. So that is something which is definitely worth considering, and we can move in that direction. I think the point in the different cases which have come in the last couple of weeks is also the manner in which it's like Mr. Hegde pointed out, it's suddenly put out in the media. There's continuous supply of news from the agencies themselves in one case, and in another case you are seeing silence when it's about 10,000 times the commercial quantity of heroin in Gujarat. So I think why are the media narratives being tried to be created a certain way by the agencies? And I think that
let's not get into media narratives right now. Let's just talk about the basics. The show today is about the policy on this one. And I know Varun is also waiting, but I'm overdue for a quick commercial break. I'll come right back on the other side. We'll get a word from Varun as well. And then we'll talk about what exactly are the benefits of decriminalizing drugs, especially small quantity. What does it do to other people? And like Mr. Banerjee pointed out, India, the highest manufacturer of opium in the world. Isn't that where the crackdown should be happening? That's coming up on the other side. Welcome back on FYI. We are talking about India's legally, where do we stand when it comes to drugs and the laws in the country. Let's go to Varun as well, who's been waiting patiently. Varun, the question I think on everybody's mind really is, when a large quantity of heroin, all 3,000 kgs, which goes into crores, in 6-digit crores really at this moment, how can that not be a high profile sort of priority compared to what's happening right now?
Correct. In fact, just to take it back to the issue which you started off regarding the larger drug policy, even if you look at the Indian Constitution in Part 4, there's a very interesting topic where actually the ill abuse of drugs comes from. In Part 4, the directive principles under Article 47, that is where the actual intent of how stoppage of either intoxicants or drug abuse should be stopped, and the words used therein, which I may just read with your permission, is actually very relevant. It says that the state shall regard the raising of level of nutrition and the standard of living of its people and the improvements of public health as among its primary duties. In particular, the state shall endeavor to bring about prohibition of consumption except for medicinal purposes, for intoxicating drinks and for drugs which are injurious to health.
You are effectively saying, Varun, that the government in the law also talks about how we shouldn't be focusing our attention on small end users basically, because they're victims in one way. What you should really be going after is cartels. That's what you're saying.
Yes, in fact, it goes on to say that there is an exception carved out that in case that it is used for medicinal purposes, that could in fact should be put out as an exception from these acts. So specifically, if you look at it from the perspective of cannabis, and like for example, bhang in Rajasthan, there are certified bhang takers. Why do they have certified bhang takers? Because for the reason that the cannabis used, the leaves which are used for the purposes of consumption is very different from, say, the charas or ganja. So similarly, charas, ganja also being in nature of drugs which are not really, something which is earth-shattering or in fact so detrimental to your own health. In fact, used for medicine purposes in so many other countries, as shown by you, as said by. Mr. Hegre, that
I'm afraid I have to wrap it up over there, gentlemen. But I think the question that I really want to leave everybody with as of this moment, and something on everybody's mind also, is just this. How is it that record, something that we've never seen in the country before, 3,000 kgs of heroin, never made headlines, and now these high-profile celebrities, small consumption raids are getting all the attention? Isn't that something to worry about? Is that something that is going to solve the drug abuse problem in the country? Think over that. That's it on FYI. Bye-bye.